Chapter 3 covers angles and triangles. This chapter is only 4 sections long, so there's not a lot to it, but there is some key ideas that you need to understand within the way of angles and triangles. So we're going to start talking about a few concepts that you should have learned prior to 8th grade. These are all 7th and 6th grade standards, so we're going to review them real quickly. So please make sure you write these down. There are 4 vocab words. The first review vocab word is adjacent angles. Adjacent angles are angles that share a common side or vertex. So make sure you write that down. A little hint though, they're angles that are next to each other. So let me draw an example for you. I'm going to draw an angle, and I'm going to call that angle ABC. Now I'm going to cut it into 2 angles, and I'm going to put a point D. These 2 angles that I'm going to put in red, that angle and that angle, they share a common point, which is a vertex of B, and a side, which is the ray. They're next to each other. So angle ABD and angle DBC are adjacent. The next vocab word are vertical angles. Vertical angles are 2 angles that share a vertex and are across from each other. They are congruent. So here's how a vertical angle looks. A vertical angle is when you have 2 lines that intersect at a point, and we're going to call that point A. And I'm going to call these B, C, M, and N. So this angle here, the red angle, angle BAC, and angle MAN are across from each other. They are vertical and they are congruent. These 2 angles, which are angle BAM and angle CAN, are also across from each other. They are also vertical angles. The next vocabulary word are complementary angles. Complementary angles are 2 angles whose sum is 90 degrees. This one's easy. 2 angles that make a right angle. 2 angles that if you added them together would make a right angle. So if I have an angle, let's call these points M, N, P, and R. Angle M, N, R, and angle R, N, P, this angle here and this angle here add up to 90 degrees because you have a right angle in here. So this one, for example, could be 60, this one could possibly be 30, but they add up to 90 degrees. Supplementary angles are 2 angles whose sum is 180 degrees. Now if you remember, 180 degrees is a straight line. So if I have 2 angles that make up that straight line, so for example this angle here and this angle here would make a straight line. They are supplementary. So this one, for example, could be 120, and this one could be 60. And 120 plus 60 gives you 180. The same thing is true here, and this is probably the most important. I have a line right here, this red line. This angle here in the red and this angle here make a straight line. They're supplementary. This angle here are supplementary, the blue line. This angle and this angle. Anytime you have 2 angles that make a straight line, they are 180 degrees. They are supplementary angles. Now everything I just told you, those 4 vocab words, are not what you're being taught in section 3.1. All 4 of those things are prerequisites of what you should already know before 8th grade. So if you have any concern on how to do any 4 of those things, you need to make sure you study. Quiz yourself, look up examples, look on YouTube, look at other ways those problems work, because those are all things you must already have known before you even start this chapter. So now we're going to start some new things. 2 more vocab words that you should already know by now are as follows: parallel lines and perpendicular lines. Parallel lines are lines in the same plane that do not cross. They don't ever intersect. So you may say that if I have line P and line Q, they are lines that are parallel. They are never going to cross. Perpendicular lines are intersecting lines that form 4 right angles. So for example, line M and line L and line M are perpendicular because they form a 90-degree angle at the vertex. Another example would be this. These 2 lines would be perpendicular because they make 4 right angles. So let's now talk about your key idea, what really we're talking about in section 3.1. Vocab word, here's a new one that we're going to talk about right before our key idea. A transversal is a line that intersects 2 or more lines. So we'll draw a picture of that in a second, but make sure you get that written down. So now let's talk about our key idea. We're first going to talk about corresponding angles. Corresponding angles. When a transversal intersects parallel lines, corresponding angles are congruent. Get that written down, pause the video, and then we're going to draw a picture. So let's first draw 2 parallel lines. Remember, these are lines that are never going to intersect. And we're going to label this one line P and this one line Q. Those are parallel lines. Now this line that I'm drawing intersects both of those lines, and that is called your transversal. We are going to call that line T. Now if you notice, we have 4 angles. 1, 2, 3, 4 up top, and 1, 2, 3, 4 on the bottom. Corresponding angles are angles that are in the same position. So for example, if I look at this angle here, this angle is in the upper left-hand corner. This angle is in the upper left-hand corner of these 4 angles. Those are corresponding angles. That means they're exactly the same. The next angle, this angle, we're going to use 2 tick marks. Those are the same. The next angle, these are the same because they're in the bottom left-hand corner. And lastly, we're going to do 4 lines. These are the same. Now, we're going to review a couple other things. These 2 angles here make a straight line. These are supplementary. 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 These angles that are crossing each other, these are vertical. These angles that are crossing each other are vertical. The black and blue angles are vertical. The 2 red angles here are vertical. So everything you see here, everything that matches up, the red lines here with the 1 line, those are congruent. The blue angles are congruent. These red angles right here are congruent, and the black angles are congruent. So let's do an example. We have 2 parallel lines, and those are A and B. Now something I want to tell you, and you probably have never seen this before, but if you see these little marks like right here, I'm going to draw them. They're kind of like little triangles. If you ever see those, that means those lines are parallel. So we need to find out all of the missing angle measures. I want to know, what is angle 1? What is angle 2? What is angle 3? And so on. So now we just got to use problem-solving skills. Well, let's look at this. We have a lot of different things we can use. We can use corresponding angles, we can use vertical angles, we can use supplementary angles. So let's start with angle 2. Angle 2 is across from angle 110. They are vertical. Vertical angles, angles that are across from each other, are always congruent. So we know angle 2 is also 110 degrees. Now, we also know corresponding angles are congruent if the lines are parallel. So here we go. We have an angle in the upper or the bottom left-hand corner. So if we slide it this way, angle 6 is corresponding to it. So angle 6 is also 110 degrees. Angle 4 would also be 110 degrees because it's corresponding to angle 2, and these two right here, 4 and 6, are also vertical. So how do I get 1, 3, 5, or 7? Well, once again, we have to understand one thing. This is a straight line. I'm going to label this in, let's say, purple. So right here, this purple line is a straight line. That means it's 180 degrees. So we know that angle 1 plus 110 has to equal 180. So what would angle 1 have to be in order for both of these to add up to 180? Well, all you do, simple math, 180 minus 110. So that's going to give you an angle measure of 70 degrees. So angle 1 is 70. Angle 3 is across from it, so that also has to be 70. And 5 and 7 are corresponding to 1 and 3. So 5 also has to be 70 degrees, and angle 7 has to be 70 degrees. Jot down number 2. In number 2, I just want you to find angle 1 and angle 2. Do that on your own. Alright, so angle 1 and 99, look at these. They're in the same position. Right here you have one angle, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. They all match up. So if you slide this over, angle 1 has to also be 99 degrees. Now what do you know about these two angles here? Instantly you should see, wow, well they make a straight line. That's a straight line. So these two angles here have to add up to 180 degrees. So we take 180 minus 99. Well, 180 minus 99 is going to give you 81. So we know angle 2 is going to be 81 degrees. Number 3. In number 3, I want to know the measure of angle 1. So in this angle, or in this problem, we are given 80 degrees as the angle here. So let's say this is a parallelogram. And parallelogram would mean that this side here is parallel to this side. So if we look at that, we know that if I'm going to redraw it, I have two parallel sides, which are down here, I'm drawing them, and this side is 80. And I want to find this angle here. This is my original shape in blue. This is my original problem. Well, if this is 80 degrees right here, that means this is corresponding. So that means this one would also have to be 80 degrees. And these two together make a line. Here's your line. These two make a line, therefore they have to add up to 180. So 100 minus the 80 that we have would give me 100 degrees. So the measure of angle 1 is 100 degrees. Once again, that's because this angle right here would be 80, and these two together make a straight line. Therefore, I have to take 180 minus 80. The last two vocab words. I know we have a lot of them today, but we have two more. Alternate interior and alternate exterior angles. Now let's think about your home. Alternate would mean every other. Interior means inside. Exterior means outside. So here's what it says. When a transversal intersects parallel lines. So let's first just draw those. We have two parallel lines. We have two parallel lines. We have a transversal. So we're going to do this twice since we have two types of angles. Alright, so alternate and then interior. So we're going to start with alternate. Interior. Alternate interior means the four inside angles, and alternate means every other. So I'm going to draw them in red. So here, these two angles are on opposite sides of the transversal and on the inside of the parallel lines. The blue lines would also be congruent. So if I talk about alternate exterior, that would mean that this angle here and this angle here are congruent, and this angle here and this angle here are congruent because they are on the outside of the parallel lines, alternate exterior. And there's your angles. Alternate exterior, alternate interior. Please review vertical angles, adjacent angles, complementary and supplementary. Those are what you should know before you even got into 8th grade. And then today's new angle or vocab words, which are corresponding. We have a transversal, and we have alternate interior and alternate exterior angles.